are kind of conflicting for certain people in certain areas, whether they're vegetarians or they want their protein sources from certain places or vegans. So it really depends on the person as to like the type of protein that I would be telling them to take or use. Yeah, that's totally fine, Jeff. But so yes, I think that supplements can be beneficial. I especially think things like protein powders and protein bars that have high quality ingredients and that are tested for purity and potency, that's also really important. So there are certain companies that you can look at. There's one called USP, and I'll type that here for you real fast so that you can. I don't remember exactly what USP stands for, but USP is a really awesome company because I'll see if I can Google it for you so that you can see. Let's see, supplement verification. USP is really great because they are a company that is hired by supplement companies to check for purity and potency of all of their products. So let's see, can I share? Maybe I'll put a link. Can I put a link on here? Or is that something? Here we go. Oh, there you go. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And then I also have another link right here that is about like their verification process. So if you look at a brand that I can think of is Nature Made. They actually use USP. They pay USP to check the potency and the purity of all of their supplements. So it's always good, I think, that if you're going to choose on your own to use a supplement or at least research it, that you're looking to make sure that it's pure and you're looking for a valid company that is really investing into their product and having it tested to make sure that, and what does that mean? So like a supplement might not be regulated by the FDA. So when it's not regulated, they don't check it to make sure that it doesn't have a bunch of fillers in it that aren't good for you. So I would say, like, if you do research and you decide a certain supplement is good for you to use, or you want to start exploring and using it, make sure that it's backed by some sort of company that you believe in that is testing the validity of that product. So that's usually how I work with my clients. I don't say you should be using this product or that product. Now, I can say one other thing about supplementation from like a weight training standpoint. I could go with that too. A lot of different types of supplements are out there that say that they're going to beef you up, or like pre-workouts or different things like that. So one of the only supplements that is tested across the board longitudinally, and I don't know if you've done a lot of talking about research or anything like that, but the word longitudinal, it means over a long period of time. So not a lot of those supplements have been tested over a long period of time because it's very expensive to do. But one supplement that has been tested longitudinally for safety is creatine. So if you're thinking about taking a supplement for performance enhancement when it comes to like muscular stamina and muscular building, creatine is definitely very studied over and over and over again. Now, there are some ins and outs of like the biochemistry behind creatine, that it has to be used in a very specific way in order for it to be effective. And I'm not going to get into all of the really little details for that. I'm just giving you like my 2 cents on that is a supplement that I would recommend under certain circumstances, because I know that it has been longitudinally studied and there's a lot of research out there to back it. There's a lot of other supplementation that's out there these days that could be really, really great that I am not going to say that I recommend, because there's just not a lot of that longitudinal research out there. Somebody else, some other clinicians might feel differently about it because they've used it and it's worked with their clients. So I'm not discrediting those supplements. I'm just saying that I don't recommend them to people. Does anybody have any questions about that? That's such a good question. And it's also like not an easy question to answer. That's why I spent some time on it. I get that question all the time. And it makes sense to get that question all the time. But it's a tough answer. It really is. And especially because, like I said, a lot of people will take different medications, and those medications will interact differently with different supplements. So I guess my other bit of advice is a lot of these things that you might read about and hear about could be beneficial to you, but I recommend that you also look into the interactions that they might have with different types of medications that you might be taking. So, and I mean any medication that you're taking, whether it be like for depression, anxiety, birth control, whether it be like a heart medication, no matter what it is, if your doctor is prescribing you a medication, and also like the way that supplements interact with other supplements. So just do your research, whether you're going to give advice to your clients or you're going to be taking them for yourself. So any other questions right now? I actually really like that that was the first question that was asked. Will it just pop up if somebody asks a question, Jeff?
You'll see the little chat thing will have a 1 or a 2 or whatever next to it.
So what is, in your very last lecture, what did you talk about?
So we covered physical activity. So we talked about types of exercise, how to measure how active you are. So we talked about BMR. We talked about the different types of strength. We compared muscular versus endurance versus flexibility.
Oh, great.
Endurance. We talked about the best way to measure body composition and why, a little bit at least, about why stuff like BMI and weight is not a great way. We talked a little about visceral fat and body fat percentage.
You see the smile on my face? How happy I am that you just said that. I hate BMI. So that's awesome. Okay, so I did see a question that popped up, so I'm going to talk about that, and then I'll circle back to the things that you just mentioned, because all of that is like hotspot for me and definitely my expertise. So Gwyneth asked about, she said, for people who don't have workout equipment at home, what types of exercises would you recommend? So this is something, remember we were talking about adaptability. I mentioned that. This is something that I think we're all dealing with right now, and that I, in particular, am dealing with the adaptability and versatility of my business, because I own a personal training studio where people actually come in and work out with me. The beautiful thing is that for 6 years before my business was established brick and mortar, it was online personal training. So I was immediately ready, probably about 2 weeks before every other gym was, wouldn't you say, Jeff? To get all of my clients going and with at-home workouts. So that's a really great question. What I've tried to do with my clients is make sure that they have the bare minimum staple pieces of equipment so that they can work out at home, and we can write all the workouts for them across the board, know that they have the equipment that they need. So I'll start with that, and then I'll start taking pieces away. So when I was much younger, I had this amazing boss, and he would have meetings, staff meetings constantly. And in the staff meetings, he would have us utilize our brains, right? And ask us questions like icebreakers and things like that. And I remember specifically, he used to ask, what if you had this catastrophe? And it was so funny that I had been through like Q&As like this in my life, but this catastrophe where everything was taken away from you and you could only pick 3 pieces of equipment or 4 pieces of equipment. Sometimes he would change the number to get everything in to stay healthy and stay strong. What would those pieces of equipment be and why? So my answer to that question always was I would have a bench, right? I would have a weight bench. So, and I'll tell you how I've rectified that with my clients. I would have bands. So I would have long bands and round bands. I would have dumbbells, right? That's super, super important. And space. So as much space as possible. So with that, not everybody can, on the seat of their pants on a whim, because the world got shut down basically overnight, go and get a weight bench, right? So I've made sure that all of my clients have an exercise ball. They have some kind of chair, they have dumbbells, and then they have those bands that I've told you about. So I highly recommend that if you're advising people or yourself trying to have pieces of equipment to where you can get it in, that you have like those 4 top things, because you can pretty much do just about anything with those things. And I'll even tell you that if you have like a long tube band, the only other thing I would recommend is a sock. And Jeff, were you in the session with the sock?
We still use that sock, yeah.
Yeah. So do I have my band? Oh, I do have my band. I can show you. Give me one quick second and I'll get a sock.
Don't worry, guys. It's not what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking, but it sounds like something.
All right. So one reason that I recommend this, right? I know the question was don't have any equipment. So my first bit of recommendation is try to go on Amazon and get those couple of things. Because like Amazon is still delivering, and I have been having things shipped to my clients, so you still can get them. But sometimes, like if you want to do back exercises and you need to have the band overhead, but you don't have a place where you can loop it around, if you take a sock and you tie it to the middle of the band, then you can take the sock and you can put it on the other end of the door and then close the door. I always recommend to lock the door. Let me see if I can actually show you. I'm going to try and move this a little bit so that you can see. Can you see my door? Yeah, you can? Okay, awesome, great. You're going to see my shoes too. I like high heels a lot, just so you all know. Anyway, so you can take this band with the sock and you can put it around the door like this. And we always recommend that you put it in the middle of the door, because if you put it at the end of the door, that's the weakest point, so it can pull the door back. So you take the sock, you put it in the middle of the door, and then you close the door and you lock it. And I always say that you should lock the door on the other end because, oh, I saw you just posted an Amazon link. You're awesome, Jeff. You always do it on, you always lock the door, especially because I have some clients that have those French door handles and they move very easily. So it's good to lock the door so the door doesn't go flying open and hit you. But then when you have this tool like this, you could do all kinds of exercises like lat pull downs. You could do one arm at a time, like grab both of them to increase the resistance, different things like this. You can do like overhead bicep curls, all different things like that. You can also do like some straight arm press downs. So that's just one example. That's why I said sock, and it's really not silly. It's actually very helpful to have that, because if you have, even if you just have, go ahead, buddy. Even if you just have a band, you can do all of this overhead stuff and all of this stuff below. And then you can, even if you don't have a long band, you can take this band here and like tie it around your legs. And then you have resistance for your glutes as well. So the other thing is that you can take those like 4 pieces of equipment that I mentioned to you and Google all different kinds of exercises to do with them. So the difficult part about that is that you do a lot of Googling to get like a good full body workout. So that's where somebody who has a lot of experience, or somebody, for those of you who are health majors, maybe your friends and family could come to you and you could write a full plan for them with that. But hopefully that's helpful and that answers that question, because I know that that's like a ton of quote unquote adaptability that we're all dealing with right now, and something that I am super closely trying to help my clients with. And I knew that our talk today was going to go a little bit different than it would if we weren't dealing with this. So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I am trying really hard to help people not give up. And there are a lot of people that are giving up in some ways. And I think that so exercise is medicine. It just is. And it's so important to make sure that you use that as not just like I want to look like this, but I want to feel like this. Because when you feel good and you dilate those vessels and you get your blood flowing and you're like pumping the muscles, that's going to help you focus and help you get through all of this. I see is Madeline right now, you're like rubbing your neck, probably because you're doing a lot of sitting, right? And looking at the computer right now, and you're probably exhausted. So another thing that I might recommend for someone like you and anybody else who's doing this, because all of you are sitting and you're really cozy, and most of you are probably in your home, your room, and you're doing this. I see Emily, she's really cozy right there. But like when you're doing this for a long period of time, you need to like get up and you need to stretch, and you need to get like a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball or something like that, and like rub the back of your neck and stretch yourself out. And also, one other bit of advice I'll give you for all of this sitting and being at home that we're doing is moving your legs. And the reason that you want to make sure that you move your legs is because there are one-way valves in your legs that are, it's called passive. So that means they're not engaging themselves. And what those valves do is they make it so that blood doesn't pool in your legs. If I had something to draw with, I would draw it for you. But if you sit at your desk and you do schoolwork or you peruse social media for long, long periods of time. Oh, I know a good example. Have any of you ever been on an airplane, and you've been on an airplane for a long period of time, and then when you go to get off of the airplane, your ankles are a little swollen or your legs feel a little stiff and a little tight? That's because those one-way valves in your legs, they're passive, so the muscles that are in your legs, they push those valves and force them to open and move the blood through your leg. But if you're not moving your legs for long periods of time, then all the blood just drips down and gets stuck in those valves. So you really need to like keep your legs moving more importantly than any other part of your body right now. It's super, super important so that you're engaging those muscles in your legs and you're pushing those valves and forcing it to move all of that blood through. And one of the reasons for that is because the pump for blood in your body is your heart. If you take a look down at your body right now, you see that your heart is all the way up here close to your throat, right? Well, it's actually like right here, but your legs are all the way down there. So the answer to that, to your pump being so far away from your legs, is those valves. And we have to keep them moving with our muscles. So hopefully that's helpful too. I always mention that to people, especially when they're doing a lot of sitting. So in a typical workout regimen, how should we mix up what types of exercises to use? So upper body, lower body, full body? That's a really good question. So there are so many different types of techniques for exercise, and there are a lot of different theories, and there's a lot of different types of research that's been done to answer that question. And my answer to you is that it totally depends. Totally depends on what the goals are and who's doing the exercise. Oh, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I just got a notification that I have to plug my computer in. Sorry. I thought it was already, that's because I moved it. Okay. All fixed. So that's a hard question, Jeff. All right. I prefer for my clients to do two different types of exercise. I prefer to do to combine split workouts with full body workouts. So that is what I almost exclusively do in my club, unless it's a private client. And I also I prefer that for group settings to avoid overtraining. So I'm going to speak right now and answer that question, thinking about the current trends that are in the world of fitness. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of what they call box gyms, or there are a lot of like an Orange Theory type of gym, where it's like full body workout every single time that you go there, and really hardcore workout every time that you go there. I actually go to Orange Theory. I enjoy it. I go there once in a while because I like the high intensity interval training, and I really, really enjoy I like the running, and I don't run a whole lot because I can't, but I really enjoy it. So this is not me saying that Orange Theory is not a good place, but the thing that I personally, in my professional opinion, do not like about that business structure is that in order for that business to survive, they have to encourage people to overtrain. And that's something that is really frustrating for me. And what I mean by that is it's high intensity exercise training and full body workouts, and they do them all day, every single day, 7 days a week, every day of the month, and they never close unless there's coronavirus and the whole world shuts down. You know what I mean? So that's the only time. And there are people that legitimately go there 7 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, even 5 days a week. And they do full body workouts back to back to back. And there are lots and lots and lots of businesses that are structured like that. That's not good for you. It's not. We need to, as public health authorities, teach people that it's really awesome to have a membership to a place like Orange Theory, and they probably would sue me if they knew I was saying this to you. But you also need to do other modalities of exercise. So if I was talking to a client, and I have quite a few clients who have come to me injured from that particular place, I would say to those clients, it's good for you to go there like once or twice a week and do your full body workouts and your high intensity workouts, but you also need to have rest days. You need to split up the types of exercise that you do. And with someone like that, I might say, maybe it's a good idea for you to do like 2 full body workouts a week and then focus on something else like yoga, Pilates, your cardio on other days, so that you're not overdoing it in something like that all body, all the time, really hardcore setting. So I'll speak to that right now because that is where the trend is right now. But with that said, there's also, let's talk about like bodybuilders. I was a competitive bodybuilder for years, and I really loved it and enjoyed it. But overtraining happened a lot in that field as well, because people would go to the gym 5 times a day, or if they didn't go to the gym 5 times a day, then they would go to the gym for like 3 hours at a time. I don't recommend that either. So to somebody who is in the bodybuilder setting, I would recommend to them doing split workouts, and doing those split workouts like 3 to 5 days a week, where they were doing like back and biceps one day, chest, shoulders, triceps another day, legs another day. And this is kind of the format that we follow at my gym so that people don't overtrain. And then one day a week, they're doing some kind of, we call it in the bodybuilding world a junk day, where it's like all the extra stuff that you want to work on. So you might work on glutes that day, or biceps, or back. I always wanted to work on back. So a lot of people like to work on their shoulders for that extra day. So if I had a bodybuilding client, I might recommend that type of exercise for them. If I had a client who was really good at doing cardio, A lot of people hate cardio, but if I had someone who loved doing cardio and they were like, I could do cardio every day of the week, then for a client like that, I might say to them, for weight training, maybe you should do like 2 or 3 full body workouts a week, and or maybe 2 full body strength training workouts a week, and then every other day you could do cardio, because they're not overtraining. So the whole point to all of this is like, it has to be what that person enjoys. And then I have to take my expertise and make sure that they're not overdoing it. So a place like Orange Theory, they might go in and do the cardio workouts, which are fine, but then they're also doing shoulders every single day, or they're doing glutes every single day. That promotes overuse and overtraining, and it can promote injury. Has anybody ever heard of rhabdo? Anybody at all? So rhabdo is something, I can't see everybody's faces, but rhabdo.
Greg, you probably know what this is.
So rhabdo is literally toxicity from overtraining, and it's something that happens a lot in like the CrossFit world. And I'm not trying to give CrossFit a bad name either, because I know a lot of very successful, very healthy CrossFit competitors. But sometimes when people, sometimes it happens to elite competitors, but when people like housewives, things like that, they go in their 40s, late 40s, 50s. They're like, I'm going to go and be this amazing CrossFit competitor now. And then they go repeatedly over and over and over again every single day of the week. They're not conditioned enough to do things like that. And then they start to break down their muscle tissue because they're overtraining, and it literally becomes toxic to them. So when they break down the muscle tissue and they have muscle cell death, it poisons their liver. So that's really hard to do, but it's actually more common now than ever because of the overtraining trends. So that's why, like, that question, I really would have to base it upon the person. Now, if it's just your general everyday person asking, how do I split up my workouts? Then I would say make sure that you're working every body part at least once every week. Every body part or every muscle at least once every week. So what does that mean? Go ahead and Google the muscles of the body, and then Google exercises that you can do to work those muscles of the body. Or maybe you already know that, right? So now there are things that go along with that. So that muscle, if you're going to work it at least once every single week, what does working it mean? So if you want to put generic reps and sets on it, that muscle, you should do an exercise like 12 to 15 repetitions. This is just the general population, 12 to 15 repetitions 3 times in that one workout for each muscle. We'll keep it basic like that. Now, you do want to have rest in between those sets. So let's say you're doing a bicep curl where you're going like this, right? You could do that bicep curl, and then you can move on to do a shoulder exercise, and then you want to rest. Or you could just do that bicep curl and then rest. But you want to make sure that you're resting in between those sets. Hopefully that's helpful. Do you feel like that answers your question, Jeff?
Yep, totally. I think I pretty much had known that from what you were saying. I just wanted to make sure everybody realized kind of how to space it out.
Yeah. So Jennifer says, so basically work out moderately and prevent from overtraining. I think for the general population, yes. Now, I'm not talking about elite athletes. That's something completely different. And that's something where that would be very specific depending on what the person's goals were. So I'm working on, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I wanted to say that probably 50% or more of the, I'm looking up there, I should be looking here, 50% or more of the students who are in the class are athletes as well. So I don't know if that helps
awesome,
you.
Yeah.
Talking, but
are or are not?
They are.
They are.
Yeah, we have quite a few athletes, and Immaculata is a pretty A lot of people at Immaculata are in
That's
sports.
great.
So yeah, you have a lot of athletes on the call right now too.
So then can you all, who are athletes in the comments, can you tell me what kind of sports you play? I would love that. I'll just wait a second so that I can see. Okay, awesome. All right. This is really good. This helps a lot. Okay, so I'm going to go down this line and I'm going to give you some like sport specific guidelines that I would give for some of these different sports that you play. So if you play baseball, it obviously depends on what position you play, but that's very sports specific training that you need to do for baseball. So if you're a pitcher, then you need to go get a pitching coach, and the pitching coach is going to run you through all different kinds of exercises and preventative measures that you need to practice all the time. And I'm sure, I guess, Gregory, I'm sure that you have been playing baseball for a long time, so you already know that. But if I had somebody who was a student athlete that came to me and was a baseball player, the first thing that I would ask them is what position they play. And then the next thing that I would do is either, I don't really specialize in baseball training because it is so very sports specific. But I would either refer you out to a person who could help you with that, or I would find them. Is that Gregory? Who am I? Oh, hi. What position do you play?
Outfield.
Outfield. Okay, so very different than being a pitcher, right?
Yeah.
So have you had very sports specific training? Have you gone to any studios or special coaches for that, or just had it in school, or?
So I'm a junior now, but back in high school we went to this. It was a CrossFit box, and it was like a strength and conditioning place also, and we did that kind of like the push pull legs kind of thing, that kind of style, 3 to 4 times a week, with Saturday being the fourth day being like a more like agility agility training. But now I'm really just doing more of like the bodybuilding. Also not just doing like one muscle a day, or body part a day, but still doing like a little split each day. But it's
That's great.
probably not as it's completely different from what I did during high school. So, but I still do the running and the ladder drills and all the stuff to keep my feet for outfield like fine.
Yeah, so you probably need a lot of that agility training, right? So that's completely different than just your everyday run-of-the-mill person who comes and says, I just want to exercise and get healthier. You have some very sport-specific things that you're working on doing. And do you think that your new style now is helping you more than when you were younger?
I'm definitely way stronger, and I progressed quicker than the old like training style. But I don't know. I definitely don't think it made it harder to continue playing the sport. But I don't know. Maybe I guess some of the things maybe like made my hamstrings like quicker, bounce quicker, so I can be faster in the outfield. But I don't know. Besides the strength, I really don't think it's been too detrimental. But it's definitely maybe helped a little bit. The new
Good.
style.
Well, that's great. Awesome. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
So for soccer is also something, so you need a lot of speed and you need a lot of power in soccer. So Samantha says that she does soccer. So for someone like you, I would probably recommend, that's probably like seasonally, honest. So you would do something like you'd have your heavy times of year where you would do different types of lifting strategies with like a strength and conditioning coach to keep your lower half nice and strong and have lots of power. Probably also depends on what position you play. Again, a bunch of speed and agility training. Softball, probably very similar to training for baseball and like what we talked about. Volleyball, a lot of these are kind of similar types of training with sport-specific training that you would have to do. As an athlete, you do a lot of training every day. So that's true. Wouldn't you say, Gregory, you do a lot of training just about every day, or at least like 5 days a week?
Yeah, definitely when we're in season, every day outfielders are sprinting, so we're working our legs every single day pretty much.
Exactly. But that's like on the level of an athlete. That's different from somebody who is just like joining a gym and trying to get fit. So, especially when it's later on in their lives, the older that people get, the more challenging it is to get them into like, you have to be careful because people can get hurt. That's the whole point. Now, one thing that I see here that is an interesting combination. So Gwen or Gwyneth, you do soccer and track. How do I make it so that I can see you? Just you. I can see Gregory here, but I can't see.
I
Jeff,
think
can you help me out? Oh, there you are. Okay. It's okay. So you do track and you do soccer?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, what do you do for track? What type of track do you run?
I throw. So like I do like javelin, discus, shot put.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. So that's very different. So that would actually work really nicely with soccer. I was interested in that because I have had lots of students over the course of my life when I was a professor that do track and soccer, and I've had them do distance and play soccer, and that's really challenging because their training strategies are always changing. But I think that if you're doing something like soccer and throwing, they probably could be really complementary. But you still have to work out most days of the week when you're in season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're probably getting that like athleticism is very different. And then we have a ballet dancer here, Jennifer. So I was a ballet dancer for years and years and years and years and years of my life. And that is a whole other animal and something that is true to my heart and very different. One thing that I know for sure, and you know what, Jennifer, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just on the topic of strength training, there are a lot of ballet teachers or coaches that will advise you against doing things like strength training because ballerinas need a lot of lengthening, long, lean muscle, flexibility, a lot of different types of movement there. So they might go somewhere along the lines of like a yoga or Pilates. Now, I know they're not all like that, and you do need a considerable amount of strength, but the training style usually does for dancers, especially ballet dancers, tend to be very different. Is there a way I can talk to Jennifer? How do I do that? I'm looking. Do you know how I do that, Jeff? Oh, there she is.
Yeah, Jen should be around. My family is out. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So, would you agree, though, Jennifer, that your training style is very different than a lot of the training styles that we've talked about? I bet you it probably is. I'll just wait to see if she types it. Yes, exactly. So for example, my daughter, she is a ballerina and she's only 6.5, but she's been dancing since she was 2. But you work on your legs. Yeah, that's really important. So I've made it, there's like this whole thing with the world of ballet where it could be very touchy or it could be very successful, especially with females and how we take care of our bodies when it comes to ballet. So my goal for my daughter is to make sure that she is always strong and she is always healthy and she's always being good to herself. And I think as long as she does those things and other dancers, then they will have great success. So any other questions about that as far as like the styles? It's really hard to get sport specific with every single one, but it's been fun for me to see what all of you do. So I can tell you some of the differences that I see. What about you, Jeff? Did you want to cover anything else in particular?
Let me see. I'm not really sure.
We talked about a lot of things like body composition and the different muscle training types and fibers and endurance. And do you want to talk a little bit about that, about like what that looks like for goals? Because I can talk about that a little.
Yeah, that's good. We're also talking about specifically how exercise protects against certain types of illness. So I know we talked about inflammation, and then we also talked. I know we talked a little bit about osteoporosis and just sort of kind of the the I guess the pathway of which it helps. So
Okay,
both
great.
are good things to talk about too.
Yeah,
And if
so that's
anybody
one of
has any
my,
questions, throw them out, as we go along as
yeah,
well.
please do. So you talked about osteoporosis. That's awesome because that's like the bread and butter of what I talk about a lot with my clients because it's an epidemic, seriously. So many people have osteoporosis, especially as they get older. And I bet you there's not one of us in this talk right now that doesn't know someone who either has osteoporosis or is on the brink of it. They're like osteopenia, things like that. I won't get into the specifics of the difference between osteoporosis and osteopenia, but I will talk to you. You said you talked about the pathways, so did you talk about like the cells and how some of them slow down and some of them speed up, or okay?
I didn't get any of the specifics.
Okay, all right. So I'll talk a little bit about specifics, not too nerdy, but So there are two different types of cells in your body that have to do with bone growth, and it's called bone remodeling. That's the whole process. And so we have long bones in our body. So in our arm, we have a long bone. And a lot of people that don't know about the body, believe it or not, think that a bone is a solid structure, but it's actually not. It's hollow and it's also porous. And there are a bunch of little cells in there that are constantly working inside of the shaft of our bones to keep them strong and keep them healthy. And then there are cells on the other side that are breaking down bone. And both of those processes are happening at the same time. And there's a reason for that, because we hold vital nutrients in our bones that we need to pull out of our bones in order to stay strong. So case in point is vitamin D. It's something that is really important for us. We need it and we get it from our bones. We store it in our bones. Those cells break down the bones so that they can put it into our blood so that we have vitamin D. So we need to rebuild the bone, and that's where the remodeling comes in. But as we get older and our hormones start to change, especially when we're females, it still happens to males, but it's more prominent in females because of estrogen. But as our hormones start to change, the cells the cells that break down bone always stay the same because we always need the same amount. But the cells that build bone, they slow down. And in order to keep them going faster so that we're not making our bones porous and brittle, we need mechanical stress, because that's the only way that we can stimulate those cells as we get older to go faster and to build bone faster while we're breaking it down. So with that said, mechanical stress is the shortening and the lengthening of your muscles against a force. That creates an incredible amount of tension and force on the bone because that's how we move our limbs. And then it stimulates those cells to speed up and go faster. So that's why when I talk about exercise, I talk a lot about strength training, because I believe, as the clinician that I am, that strength training is the elixir of life. It gets all of your blood flowing, and it also builds and keeps strong bones. And I teach a lot about and specialize in aging and the processes of aging. And bone degradation is a huge process of aging that is preventable across the board with strength training. So it's something that's really important because quality of life as you get older is something that you need to think about. And the more brittle your bones are, the more reduced your quality of life will become. So I'm sure that lots of people have heard about older people breaking hips or getting knee replacements or hurting their shoulder, things like that. When you have a fall, which happens as you lose balance over time as you get older, you're way more susceptible to have those types of injuries happen. But also, if you don't have strong bones, they're less likely to heal. And that's when things like quality of life start to reduce. And the thing about it is a lot of people think, well, I'll deal with it when I'm old. But that's not the way that it works. Starting at approximately 35 years of age, that process starts to slow down and your bones start to become brittle and more porous. So the sooner in life that you can start things like strength training and placing that stress on the bones, the more likely you are to keep your bones healthy and strong as you age. So that's super important. I think osteoporosis is one of like the most under discussed things across the board in the health profession. And I think it's something that we need to change because it's really affecting people's quality of life in the long term. And I think it also has a negative effect on the medical community because of all the time that we need to spend medicating and testing and controlling things like osteoporosis. It's actually not a good diagnosis to get, and it's something that you want to work really hard at preventing. It doesn't mean that your bones aren't going to become weak over time, because that's just a natural occurrence of aging. But strength training is a way to significantly prevent it. So other things, what else did you say that you talked about? You talked about inflammation. So one thing about inflammation that you said 145, right? Is that the
Correct, yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. So it helps exercise in general with inflammation. Now, strength training is great to help with inflammation, and there's a ton of research that shows that. But I'm going to talk about cardiovascular exercise now and how that helps with inflammation, because that is probably more important cardio for inflammation than anything else. So we have blood, we have water, we have hormones, we have all kinds of things going on inside of our bodies. And we need to pump blood through our body to get adequate nutrients to all of the places that need it to function properly. As we get older, or when we suffer different kinds of illness, inflammation interferes with that process happening efficiently. So if we're not exercising and we're sedentary, so that means not exercising, then what happens is your blood starts to, in essence, run slower. Without getting too technical, it starts to move more slowly throughout your body. So then you start to develop different types of inflammation in different parts of your body around vital organs and arteries, and they stop functioning adequately. You're changing the different chemical composition of different organs surrounding your body that are life-sustaining. And when you do cardio exercise, this beautiful thing happens to flush out inflammation. And what that is all of your cells dilate so that your blood moves faster. You know when you like walk up a flight of steps when you're at school and you get to the top of the steps and you're huffing and puffing and you're like, even if it's just a little bit, you feel a little bit more winded than when you were at the bottom of the steps. The reason for that is because your body is starting to dilate your arteries because you're requiring more blood more quickly to get you up those steps and to function. So that's where structured cardio is awesome, because it makes that happen repetitively for a long period of time. Remember I said longitudinal? So let's call 45 minutes a longitudinal period of time for cardio. So what you're doing is you're putting that shear stress on your arteries, requiring the blood to flow, and at the same time, repeatedly flushing out that inflammation. And so I guess some of you are science and health majors, so you probably have heard of like osmosis and diffusion and high concentration to low concentration. So what you're doing is, and if you haven't, Google it, because then you can see how those processes work. When you're doing that cardio and you're dilating those arteries and those vessels, you're changing the osmosis and the diffusion through your bodies, and you're literally sucking out inflammation is what you're doing. There's also other types of things that help with inflammation, like antioxidants, because antioxidants get rid of free radicals. So that's where nutrition comes in. And I'm sure you'll probably talk about like different types of antioxidants and things like that that are important. But I think it's important to note that when antioxidants are combined with things like cardiovascular activity, you're more likely to reduce and control things like inflammation. So any questions about any of that? I hope it's helpful to everybody. What about you, Jeff? Do you have any other questions?
I don't think there's anything else that we can sort of cover in 4 minutes, but I'm sure some people at least will be curious about career ideas as well, because I know we have at least some exercise majors, some bio majors, some people who may get into health psych, I don't know. But I know specifically in your line of work, I don't know if you had anything to speak about career-wise as well in the last couple of minutes, and maybe if I don't know if people have additional questions after this, if they can reach out to me and I'll pass them along to you or whatever. So.
Yeah. So let me think about that for 1 second. So just, you mean like different types of careers that are available in the field?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would want to know that, but I don't want to speak to students. Like, if you guys want to know more about that, let me know. Just kind of like,
yeah. I think that's great. I do. There are so many different things that you can do, and it's important to think about. So there's big thing right now is occupational therapy. So if you go into college down the track of exercise science or even biology or even something like nursing, then you can go on later on in grad school. This is not grad school, right? This is undergrad. Okay, so you could go on to other schools. I had some really good OT schools around. You could go to Temple for OT, or I think Drexel has a really good program. There's lots of other schools that have really good programs. Those are just two in particular that I know have pretty decent ones in this area. Occupational therapy is great because it really deals with like simulating people who have had different types of sensory issues and neurological issues and helping them get back out into the world. Or if you're talking about younger people, from a neurological standpoint, it's stimulating some like sensory integration of the body during dealing with a lot of like neuromuscular connections and things like that, and how to form those pathways and retrain those pathways so that people can get into the world and have a normal quality of life, or a better quality of life. Physical therapy is more like the actual joints and the muscles and the bones and how injury specific we can fix people or help them fix themselves. A lot of people look at physical therapy like, oh, it's dull, it's boring. I went to PT and I was supposed to go for 8 weeks, but I went for 1 because I could do that all at home. But what they don't understand is that that physical therapist has actually been really extensively trained in helping people fix those minute details in injuries that they might not be thinking about. So they deal with not only the neuromuscular, but also the strength and the stability and the mobility aspect of things. There's also in the sports field athletic training, and a lot of people will think that athletic training is the same as strength and conditioning or personal training, but it's not. It's completely different. Athletic training is really athlete injury prevention and recovery. So that's something that is super popular these days. And you have to understand pretty much the same things that the OTs and the PTs understand, but it's extremely sports specific. So if sports are the world for you and you want to help people recover from their injuries, something like athletic training is a really great field to go in. Some other things, just real quick, you could be an exercise physiologist and work in like a clinical setting. You could be an exercise physiologist like me and work in a personal training setting, which is really necessary in a lot of fields. And then there's sports psychology too. Sports psychology is huge for athletes, whether it be young athletes, middle-aged, or older athletes, because sport requires a lot of commitment and a lot of creates a lot of stress and tension, especially with depression and anxiety and things like that that we already have to deal with in this world. So those are just a couple of really awesome fields that you can go into. And if you have questions about other stuff, then there's so many other things that you could do. Oh, and teaching. Teaching's great. Any other questions? Are we good?
Anyone?
Yoler?
That was a lot of information, guys. I mean, we could have Sarah talk like, Sarah's a teacher as well, and I know she could fill up the entire course. I could have just had her come on, and I wouldn't have to do anything all semester. But no, that's thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on and talking to everybody. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I will also, I have to give you a little plug here, so let me put your in there too, if people want to go and take a look at.
Oh yeah, that's my website for my business. You can check it out. You can always come and visit as well, but not right now.
Not right now, but yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, there are.
See me in a couple months.
Yes, and you still are you bringing back the student rates when you come back in person?
Absolutely, 100%. We have a student program, so if you want to come see us, that would be great. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, thank you, and
Thank you.
everybody else virtually on Thursday, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Sarah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi. Was that Dana? Hey, girlfriend.
Hey.
How do I get out of this?
I think down in the lower corner where you had the place where I think you have to exit.